The sun had not yet risen when the people of Umuago village began to gather near the ward center. It was election day, and everyone knew this day would decide much about their future. For weeks, the loudspeakers on vans had driven through the town, promising roads, schools, water, and even free fertilizer for farmers. Songs of different political parties had filled the air, and the walls of shops and kiosks were painted with posters of smiling men in colorful caps. Now, the time had come to vote. The ward center was no more than a small hall beside the riverbank. The hall itself was too small for everyone, so plastic chairs had been arranged outside under an old mango tree. A single ballot box, white with a black lid, was placed on the wooden table by the officials. The security man, a tall soldier with a face like stone, stood nearby. "Queue properly, I beg," shouted one of the election officers, a slim man with glasses. "No pushing. Everybody will vote." Villagers lined up patiently. Some held their voters' cards tightly. Others fanned themselves with old newspapers. Women carried babies tied on their backs. Young men leaned on motorbikes waiting for their turn. The air was heavy with dust and hope. Among the villagers was Chike, a young teacher who had returned from the city to cast his vote. He watched with pride as his mother, Mama Ebere, stepped forward and dipped her finger into the ink before placing her ballot paper into the box. "This vote is for your future, my son," she whispered as she walked past him. Chike smiled, but just as he was about to move forward, something strange happened. A wind blew across the river, stronger than usual. The trees shook and the plastic chairs rattled. Then, without warning, the sky darkened. Clouds gathered heavy and thick, as if the heavens were in a hurry to cry. "Ah, rain again," one woman muttered. "On election day?" The first drops began to fall, quick and sharp. The officer rushed to cover the ballot box with a nylon sheet, but the rain grew heavier within seconds. People scattered under the mango tree, clutching their clothes. The river, which had been calm all morning, began to rise. Its brown waters licked the stones by the bank and then spilled over with a force that made children scream. "Shift the table back," the soldier barked, "before the water reaches it." They tried, but the wooden legs sunk into the soft mud. Before anyone could grab the box, a sudden wave surged forward and swept it clean off the table. "Jesus!" someone shouted. The ballot box, still sealed, floated away like a stubborn goat refusing to be caught. It bobbed on the wild river, spinning and bumping against floating leaves. Men jumped in to chase it, but the current was too strong. The soldier fired a warning shot into the air to stop more villagers from risking their lives. "Stay back, the river will take you," he shouted. Everyone stood helpless as the ballot box drifted further and further until it became only a small white dot on the rushing water. Then, just like that, it disappeared around the bend. Silence fell. The rain slowed, but the damage was done. No one knew what to say. Some women began to wail. Men shook their heads. Old Papa Ikenna spat into the mud and said, "So this is how our votes have gone, into the belly of the river." The officer with glasses removed his cap and wiped his face. His hands trembled. "We must report this immediately," he said. But Chike stood staring at the river, his heart heavy. Something inside him whispered that the story was not yet over. The ballot box was gone, yes, but perhaps not forever. For the rest of the day, Umuago village buzzed with confusion. Some said the river spirits had stolen the box because they were angry at the politicians. Others said it was the hand of God, punishing the leaders for their lies. But no one, No one could imagine what would happen 3 days later. For 3 days, the village of Umuago could talk of nothing else. The missing ballot box became the only story in every corner. From the roadside suya stand to the church compound, from the beer parlor to the motor park, tongues wagged like restless goats. At dawn on the first day after the incident, groups of men gathered at Mama Sissy's shop. She sold bread, beans, and pep, but on that morning her shop became more like a court of gossip. "I tell you," said one man with a cap tilted to the side, "it was the spirits of the river. They don't want us to vote for liars." Another man laughed bitterly. "Spirits? My brother, forget. It is politicians. They planned this thing. Maybe they even sent somebody to push the box into the water." Mama Sissy clapped her hands. "Ah, you people should not say what you don't know. Me, I believe it is God himself. Did you not see the way the storm came suddenly? Even the trees bowed that day. God has taken away the box so that wicked men will not cheat us again." Voices rose, arguments twisted, and rumors spread like wildfire. By afternoon, the whole village buzzed with stories. Some said the soldier on duty had been paid to look away while the box was taken. Others whispered that strange men from the city had entered the village at night and were seen near the riverbank. Meanwhile, Chike, the young teacher, could not sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the box floating further away, his mother's vote and his own carried like dry leaves on water. He worried that the people would lose faith in elections forever. On the second day, a group of elders called a meeting in the village square. Men sat on wooden benches while women stood behind, carrying babies or balancing basins on their heads. The air was tense, filled with both fear and expectation. "We must remain calm," said Elder Nanamdi, the oldest among them. His white beard shook as he spoke. "This matter is bigger than us. The authorities will decide. But let no one here fight his neighbor. We need peace." But peace was hard to find. That night, angry youths gathered near the river with lanterns, shouting that their future had been stolen. Some wanted to march to the local government office. Others threatened to block the highway until answers were given. It was on the third day that everything changed. The sun had barely climbed over the hills when a fisherman named Ojo came running into the market square, panting like a man chased by spirits. His eyes were wide, his voice broken with shock. He shouted, "I saw it! By the big tree near the bend of the river, the ballot box! It has returned!" The crowd gasped. Some dropped baskets of tomatoes and yams. Children clapped, not understanding, but enjoying the drama. "You mean the same ballot box?" asked one of the elders. "Yes," Ojo nodded, his chest heaving. "The same white box floating slowly, as if it had been guided by a hand. I tied my canoe and pulled it out. It is here with me." The people rushed with him to the riverbank, and there it was, wet, muddy, but still sealed, the very ballot box they had watched vanish days before. Men touched it to be sure it was real. Women crossed themselves. Some fell to their knees in thanks. Others whispered in fear, as though the box carried a curse. But the greatest shock came when the election officers opened it in the presence of the elders. The villagers leaned forward, eyes wide, hearts pounding. Inside the box were more ballot papers than before. Many more. One of the officials counted aloud, his voice trembling. This number is higher than the registered voters of Umuago Ward." A heavy silence followed. Then a woman screamed, "Ha! They have used our river to multiply votes!" The people shouted in confusion. Was it a miracle? Was it witchcraft? Or was it the dirty hand of politics at work? Chike stood among the crowd, his fists clenched. Deep down, he knew this was only the beginning of a storm far bigger than any rain. The ballot box had returned, yes, but it had returned with a secret that could tear the village apart. The reappearance of the ballot box shook Umuago like thunder. Word spread quickly beyond the village. By evening, men from neighboring communities walked over just to see it with their own eyes. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered prayers. But in the midst of the shock, suspicion grew like weeds after rain. "Who put those extra votes inside?" asked one man at the beer parlor. "Is it not clear?" replied another, slamming his cup on the wooden table. "One party has used juju to stuff the box. River spirits cannot write names, my brother." By the next morning, trouble was brewing. Youths gathered in small groups, their voices sharp, their fists clenched. They accused one another of working for this politician or that. Even brothers argued, pointing fingers as if an invisible knife hung between them. Mama Abere, Chike's mother, tried to calm her neighbors. "We are one people," she said softly. "Don't let politics divide us." But her words were like pouring water on hot oil. The flames of anger kept rising. That afternoon, the sound of car engines broke the uneasy silence. 3 black jeeps rolled into Umuago, their tires crushing the dust, their windows tinted dark like the eyes of a snake. People stopped whatever they were doing. Even goats scattered from the road. From the jeeps stepped men in fine suits, their shoes shining as if they had never touched mud in their lives. Behind them came others in dark glasses, their jaws hard, their hands resting near hidden weapons. The villagers murmured, "Politicians." At once, the elders were summoned to the square. The ballot box was brought out again, still sealed, but heavy with the strange votes inside. The men in suits introduced themselves as representatives from the city, sent to investigate. The leader among them was a short, round man with a wide smile that never reached his eyes. He adjusted his red cap and said in a smooth voice, "My people of Umuago, we thank you. You have done well by keeping the box safe. The government will handle everything now." But Chike could not keep silent. He stepped forward, his heart beating fast. "Sir, we all saw the box float away. We all saw it return. But it came back with votes that don't belong to us. How can this be handled quietly? We need answers." The round man's smile stiffened. His eyes flashed for a second before he forced another laugh. "Young teacher, calm yourself. These things happen. What matters is peace. Let us not disturb the nation with small matters from one village." The crowd stirred angrily. Small matter? Their voices were stolen, multiplied, and twisted, and he called it small? Elder Namdi raised his staff. "No, this cannot be swept under the rug. The truth must come out." The men in dark glasses shifted uneasily. Their hands tapped their belts. The air grew heavy. Even the birds in the trees seemed to hold their breath. Mama Sissy whispered to the woman beside her, "Eh? They want to silence us. Can you not see it in their faces?" One of the younger men from the jeeps stepped forward. His voice was sharp. "The ballot box must leave Umuago today. If you refuse, you will be treated as enemies of the state." Gasps filled the square. Women clutched their children. Men clenched their fists. But before anyone could reply, a shout came from the edge of the crowd. It was Ojo, the fisherman who had found the box. His eyes burned with fire. "If you take that box without explaining these votes, then let the whole world know that Umuago has been robbed." The crowd roared in agreement. Fear mixed with courage, like palm wine that turns strong after fermenting. The men in suits exchanged glances. The smile vanished completely from the round man's face. For the first time, he looked worried. Chike knew then that the battle was only beginning. The box had brought them trouble, and now powerful forces wanted it hidden. But could the truth of Umuago really be buried in silence? The question hung in the air like thunder waiting to fall. The square of Umuago was heavy with silence after Ojo's outburst. The villagers stood shoulder to shoulder, their eyes fixed on the men in dark suits. It was as if two worlds had collided, one of ordinary farmers and traders, and another of polished men who carried power like a hidden knife. The round man in the red cap spoke again, but this time his voice was harder. "Listen well. This matter is delicate. If you resist, You put yourselves in danger. The box is government property. We must take it now." But Elder Enamdi struck the ground with his staff. "We are not goats to be herded. This is our voice, our future. It belongs to Umuago until we know the truth." Cheers rose from the crowd, but the men in dark glasses shifted closer, their hands brushing against the bulges under their coats. Mothers pulled their children back. Men tensed, ready to defend themselves with nothing but bare fists and courage. That night, the village was restless. Nobody slept. Small groups gathered around lanterns, whispering. Some urged caution, others demanded resistance. At Mama Sissy's shop, the air was thick with fear. "These people are dangerous," one woman said. "They can burn this whole village just to hide their secrets." Another spat on the floor. "Let them try. If we surrender now, our children will never forgive us." Chike sat quietly, his mind racing. He thought of his students in the classroom, of the lessons he taught them about honesty and hope. What would he tell them now if he let lies swallow the truth? But he also thought of his mother and the danger hanging over the village. "Courage is costly," he murmured to himself, "but silence is worse." As the moon climbed higher, shadows moved at the edge of the village. Strange footsteps echoed near the river. Ojo, the fisherman, spotted them first. He crept close and saw two of the dark-glassed men pushing through the bush, heading straight for the community hall where the ballot box had been kept under guard. Ojo ran back, panting. "They want to steal it tonight," he cried. At once, the alarm spread. Bells rang, drums boomed, and villagers poured into the square with sticks, cutlasses, and lanterns. The air pulsed with anger and fear. The men in dark suits appeared again, their jeeps parked like dark beasts under the moonlight. The round man's voice was no longer smooth. "Step aside," he shouted. "Do not be fools. This is your last warning." But the people of Umuago stood firm, blocking the path with their bodies. Women raised their voices in song, their voices trembling yet strong. "We will not sell our future, we will not sell our name." The sound echoed into the night, haunting and defiant. The men in dark glasses drew closer, their faces like masks. One of them reached into his coat, and for a moment the world seemed to stop. Babies wailed, the drums fell silent, even the wind held its breath. Then Chike stepped forward, his voice ringing clear. "If you shoot, you will not kill silence. You will only make our cries louder. Do you think Umuago is alone? Do you think the world will not hear of this?" The villagers cheered, stamping their feet in unison. The men in suits faltered. For the first time, their confidence cracked. They had expected fear, not defiance. The round man turned, his face twisted with anger. "You will regret this," he spat. He gave a sharp signal, and the jeeps roared back to life. The men retreated into the night, leaving behind clouds of dust and promises of vengeance. But the victory felt fragile. As the engines faded, the villagers knew the battle was not over. Danger would return, perhaps in the daylight, perhaps in the shadows. That night, the ballot box sat in the center of the square, surrounded by lanterns and guarded by villagers who refused to sleep. The air was thick with tension, but also with a strange fire of unity. For the first time, the people of Umuago felt the power of standing together. Yet in the quiet of the night, Chike's heart whispered a warning. If they had defied men from the city, then greater storms were surely on the way. And somewhere, deep in the dark, the ballot box seemed to watch them back, silent, heavy, and full of secrets that could burn the whole land.
The dawn after the standoff was quiet, but not peaceful. The ballot box still stood in the village square, watched over by tired eyes and anxious hearts. Chickens clucked around it, unaware of the storm it carried. The people of Umuago had stood against the men in suits, but unity is like a clay pot, strong until the first crack appears. And by midday, the first crack came. It began as whispers. At the palm wine shed, a group of men argued in low voices. "Do you not see the danger?" one said. These politicians can return with soldiers. They can burn our farms. They can scatter us." Another man replied sharply, "So we should kneel and hand over the box like cowards? What of our children's tomorrow?" But the first man shook his head. "Tomorrow will not matter if we don't live to see it." By evening, the whispers had grown. Some villagers wanted to protect the box no matter the cost. Others said surrender was the only way to save lives. Suspicion crept in, slow but steady, like termites eating a wooden roof. That night, while the guards kept watch by the lanterns, Chike overheard two young men arguing in the shadows. "You're a traitor," one hissed. "I saw you talking with those men yesterday before they left. And you think I'm stupid enough to sell my people?" Their voices rose until others came running. The quarrel was broken up, but unease spread through the crowd. If even friends could accuse each other, then who could be trusted? The crack in the wall widened the next morning. The round man with the red cap had kept his word. He returned, but this time he did not come openly. Instead, strange gifts began to appear in the village. Bags of rice delivered quietly at night. Envelopes of money slipped under doors. Promises whispered in corners. "Give us the box, and no harm will come. Refuse, and we will return with fire." Temptation is a dangerous seed. Some ignored the gifts. Some returned them. But others kept them, their eyes avoiding the stares of their neighbors. Elder Nanamdi sensed the change. His voice trembled as he addressed the villagers. "My children, beware! They will try to break us from inside. Do not let greed or fear divide us." But already division had taken root. That evening, when the villagers gathered again in the square, a sharp argument broke out. One man shouted, "We cannot fight the government! Let us release the box and save our lives!" Another spat on the ground. "Coward! You have already eaten their rice, haven't you?" The crowd erupted in shouts. Accusations flew like stones. Men who had stood side by side now pointed fingers. Women cried out, begging them to stop. And in the middle of it all, the ballot box sat silently, like a cursed idol, daring them to tear each other apart. Chike's heart pounded as he watched. He thought of the unity they had felt only 2 nights before, the strength of their songs. Now that strength was cracking. Fear and hunger were doing what guns could not. That night, while the village slept uneasily, betrayal finally crept in. A shadow moved across the square, silent as a thief. One of the very guards who had sworn to protect the box lifted it into his arms. He glanced around once, then hurried toward the bush path that led to the highway. But fate is a sharp hunter. Ojo the fisherman, who could not sleep, spotted him. "Stop!" he cried, chasing after the figure. The traitor froze for a moment, then dropped the box and ran into the night. The noise brought the villagers rushing out. They gathered around the box once more, their faces filled with anger and shame. Some shouted the traitor's name, but others denied it, insisting he could not have done such a thing. Suspicion burned hotter than ever. Neighbor looked at neighbor with narrowed eyes. The trust that once held Umuago together was bleeding away. Chike stood near the ballot box, his fists clenched. His voice was low but firm. "We are fighting a war, but not against outsiders alone. Our enemy is also the weakness inside us, fear, greed, and betrayal. If we don't defeat that, then the box will destroy us all." The words hung in the air, heavy as stones. The villagers knew he was right, but knowing is not the same as healing. The crack in the wall had grown wide, and through it danger would soon pour like floodwater. Somewhere beyond the hills, engines were already roaring. The men in suits had not given up, and this time, they would not come with words. They would come with fire.
The morning sky over Umuago was red, like a warning. A restless wind swept through the village, bending the cassava leaves and shaking the zinc roofs. Everyone knew it. Today would not pass quietly. Children were sent away to relatives in nearby villages. Women packed water and food, whispering prayers under their breath. Men gathered in the square, their eyes set on the ballot box that still sat under the mango tree. Chika stood among them, his heart pounding. He remembered his classroom, the faces of his students, the words he always taught them. Truth is light, lies are darkness. Light must not bow to darkness. He repeated those words to himself now, as though they were armor. By mid-morning, they heard it, the distant growl of engines. Dust rose on the highway like a storm cloud. The black jeeps were returning, but not alone. Behind them came trucks filled with armed men in uniforms, their guns glinting in the sun. Fear rippled through the villagers. Some clutched their cutlasses tighter. Others whispered, "We cannot fight guns with sticks." The jeeps stopped at the edge of the square. The round man in the red cap stepped out again, his smile gone completely. His voice cut through the air like a whip. "This is your last chance," he barked. "Hand over the ballot box. Anyone who resists will pay with blood." The armed men spread out, forming a wall of steel. The villagers trembled, but not one moved aside. Women began to sing again, their voices quivering yet unbroken. The song rose higher, carrying courage through the air like smoke. The round man grew impatient. He gave a sharp nod. Guns were raised. Chika felt his knees weaken, but he stepped forward. His voice rang out, strong despite his fear. "Shoot if you must, but know this. If you silence Umuago today, you silence the truth, and truth does not die." The villagers roared with him, stamping their feet. The ground seemed to shake. Even the soldiers hesitated, their fingers twitching on the triggers. Then Ojo, the fisherman, pushed through the crowd holding something in his hand. It was a soaked ballot paper, crumpled but legible, the one he had secretly pulled from the river on the day he found the box. He held it high for all to see. "Look," he shouted. "This vote was never cast in Umuago. These papers are not ours. The river carried lies to our land." Gasps filled the square. The elders leaned forward, their faces pale. More villagers came forward, producing other strange papers they had hidden, papers marked with names no one in the village had ever heard of. The truth spilled out like water from a broken calabash. The extra votes were not the work of spirits. They were planted, forged, and hidden by powerful hands upstream before the box returned. The crowd roared in anger. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Some lowered their guns, glancing at one another. They had come to silence villagers, but now they saw evidence of fraud. The round man's face turned red with fury. "Lies," he shouted. "These villagers are liars." But his voice was drowned by the thunder of voices rising against him. "Thief, liar, enemy of truth." The chants grew louder, shaking the air. The soldiers stepped back, their leader uncertain. He could not fire on people who stood armed only with truth. At last, with a curse, the round man signaled retreat. The jeeps roared back to life, the soldiers following reluctantly. The dust swallowed them as they sped away, leaving behind the echoes of their defeat. Silence fell over Umuago, broken only by the sound of women weeping and men sighing of relief. The villagers had stood together and won, but the victory was heavy with lessons. Elder Namdi raised his staff, his old voice trembling. "My children, today we have seen that the river does not lie. It only carries what men throw into it. The lies in that box came not from heaven or spirits, but from the greed of men. Let this be our lesson. Guard your truth, for if you let it drift away, others will fill it with lies." The villagers bowed their heads. Chica looked at the ballot box, scarred and muddy, but still standing. He knew it would one day be taken away as evidence, yet in his heart he felt a strange peace. Umuago had not surrendered. They had faced darkness, and though wounded, they had not been broken. That night, under the same mango tree, the villagers lit a fire. They sat together, sharing food, laughter, and tears. For the first time in many days, they felt like one family again. The ballot box was still standing there, silent, but now it was no longer just a box of paper. It was a symbol, a reminder that truth may float away for a time, but it always returns, demanding to be seen. And in the quiet of the night, as the flames flickered, Chica whispered to himself, "Light has won, but we must guard it, always."